All right, yo, what is up, guys? I'm back with another video. We're going to be talking about Tom Brady's Mortal Kombat. We're going to be doing a reaction video to his new video, which is the Mortal Kombat community needs to hear this. And I think so far I heard like maybe 5 minutes of it. Now I kind of agree. So this is going to be a reaction video to that. So if you want to stick around for this long video, it's going to be just a little long, but it's really important because everybody needs to hear it. So to me, to everybody else that follows me, and to everybody that follows Mike Hollow and Tom Brady, I think this is something that people need to hear regardless, because this generation has truly made gaming this like small I mean, the gaming community is big, but it made something small out of updates for future games. Like the games that come out nowadays, people, they don't really think, hey, the game needs to be good at launch, and they kind of just hope. And I read so many comments in some of my videos that it's disappointing to hear everything that they talk about, everything that they say, because none of it adds up to be true, and they're constantly lying to themselves and to, falling into that corporate greed, and you can clearly see that. But I guess in this video, we're just going to kind of see what the real Tom Brady and Mike Hollow say. So or if Mike is in it, probably not, but we'll have to check it out.
So I want to break down Ryo's tweets one by one. The first one where he says the community deserves so much better, and then he's not shocked to hear about, how poor the game gets treated in tournaments. And I mean, this is a delusion that the Mortal Kombat community has created because they are unable to accept the truth. They are unable to accept reality. They see Mortal Kombat getting its back blown out by the mystery game tournament numbers. They can bring a game from 25 or 30 years ago. That game dwarfs Mortal Kombat's numbers. Like Third Strike didn't even come out in this century, and they had 1,000 people. They almost doubled Mortal Kombat's numbers. Marvel beat Mortal Kombat's numbers. They struggle to understand what's going on. So they came up with.
So within that statement alone, kind of what he says right there, it's so blatantly obvious that the games that they're making clearly aren't doing as good as they used to. And why aren't they as good as the other fighting games? And I think it's kind of obvious from, you look at the past games, they reduced the writing team, who's on the actual team itself. Look at the combat cast, who's representing your game. It goes a long way to show you, how it slowly fell, and the things that changed over time that truly diminished the game over time.
This conspiracy where people just hate Mortal Kombat, and they're hating on the game and trying to keep it down because they're unwilling to accept the reality, which is the most simple answer why this is happening. People just don't like the game. Most people don't like it, and that's why they're not traveling for it. The NRS community creates so many delusions of all these reasons of why these things are happening. Oh, well, it didn't sell in Asia, it didn't sell well there. That doesn't matter. It still sold more than all the games that are sold in Asia. Worldwide it sold more. In fact, MK was made in the West and tournaments held in the West. Those games that have tournaments over here in the West, you would think, well, okay, if it was over Japan, of course those games are going to beat out Mortal Kombat. In the West, you can hold a tournament in Chicago, the home of Mortal Kombat, and it still got beat out by the mystery game tournament. It just doesn't add up, because then, okay, well, if it's in the West, it's made in the West, it's sold more than every other game sold in the West, why is it the tournament here Mortal Kombat numbers are not bigger? It's simple. Most people just don't like the game. It's a simple solution. And when they talk about how all these people hate Mortal Kombat, that they constantly talk about how Evolution hates Mortal Kombat.
It's not that Evolution hates Mortal Kombat, or it's not that people genuinely hate Mortal Kombat. It's they hate the people behind the product of Mortal Kombat. I think that's a very key note there that he's talking about.
When the Cannons owned Evo, they would constantly talk about how Evo doesn't like us. And then Sony bought Evo, and Evo still doesn't like us. And now the Saudis own Evo, And if they don't put Mortal Kombat 1 at it this year, the community will still say, oh, Evo doesn't like us. That's 3 different owners, the Canons, Sony, the Saudis. What are the odds that all 3 of them don't like Mortal Kombat and they hate it? This doesn't make any sense. The common denominator is Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat was once respected, but respect is earned and respect is lost. And Mortal Kombat has lost the respect that it once had. Even like in Sony, right? Sony as a whole, they don't hate or love Mortal Kombat. You know, it's a game that makes money. For know, who would be the hater on behalf of Sony? Well, Rick the Hatter was running Evo for them, and the MK community swears he loves Mortal Kombat during Combo Breaker, and I guess in their delusion he must hate it when he was running Evo for Sony. It's a complete delusion. It doesn't make sense that all 3 entities, Sony, the Canons, the Saudis, would all have this grudge against Mortal Kombat. It doesn't make any sense, and it's the same for every single tournament.
So what he's kind of saying there is he's saying that no matter how many people are pointing the finger, right? To break this down in a simple way, is that no matter how many people are pointing the finger at Mortal Kombat, saying, "Oh, the game's just not enjoyable," or you know, the game's just not as good, or not that it's not as good. Well, it is. It's bad. It's not as good as it used to be. But people are pointing the finger at Mortal Kombat just to point the finger. That's what people think are happening here. That the Saudis that bought Evo, and everything else. It's not. That's not the case at all. It doesn't matter who bought it. It doesn't matter. It's. No one's playing the blame game here. The game is just blatantly bad. That's what they're trying to say. And that's why, the viewership is at an all-time low for the game on, whether it's Twitch or Evo, whatever. No one wants to compete in a game that's bad. And that's just the truth. That's what he's trying to say.
Out there. When he says the community deserves better, yes, the community does deserve better. They deserve better, but instead of telling everyone else they deserve better, start with your developer, NetherRealm. Hey, we deserve better than these games you are giving us. We deserve better. Give us a game that people want. Give us what people asked for. Don't give us these gimmicky mechanics that nobody wants, that nobody's going to get behind. And
another thing to that is that not only give the people in the community what they want, but also you don't have to have this traditional fighting game all the time. It doesn't have to be this side-by-side traditional fighter. It doesn't have to be like that. If they would, go to NRS with, an idea of saying, or to WB, whoever they're, NRS to WB, and even if that wasn't the case, hopefully they get sold out, to somebody else that will listen. But it doesn't have to be a traditional fighter. You can go on and make those spin-offs like Shaolin Monks, games like that, or games like Mythologies, or probably not Special Forces. I don't ever want to see a game like that again because that game's horrible. But you want to have diversity in your game, so it's not just stale. It's going to be stale all the time. You're going to find ways to improve in areas that probably don't need improving at all, like the interaction system with MKX. I think it was an MK11. Yeah, MK11 as well. It had Fatal Blows, which is not too bad, and it's not. I mean, those were pretty broken in some cases, but you got to balance things out too. As a fighter game, you don't just make things to make things because they're cool. You still have to balance out the game, or else nobody's going to compete in tournaments. But you really need to try to diversify the game, so it's not just a stale every 4 years. It's not just the same game with a different just a different look to it. That you don't want to have a game like that. So I guess we'll keep going.
That people are not going to enjoy the game for the most part. And the problem is when people say they don't enjoy the game and why they don't enjoy the game, people like this guy are out there saying, no, you don't like it because you're salty and you're negative. And imagine telling someone why you don't like the game and be told, no, you don't like it because you're not winning and you're salty.
Yeah. See, like, I'm not good at the Legacy Collection, right? I'm not good at the old games, but I like the old games because they're what made Mortal Kombat what it was. That's how we got all of the characters to have their identities of who they are, their cool designs, their cool outfits, their special abilities. I respect those games because they are what started MK. And then all the way up to the PS2 era, man, those games just flourished like you wouldn't believe because of how cool they were, and the designs of the characters, the special moves, the amount of characters. And then Shaolin Monks came out, and man, that was a completely different game. And sure, it wasn't your traditional fighter, and it didn't have like a bunch of characters, but it had the main characters from MK2, and I think that was enough to to be able to enjoy something different. And it was cool. It wasn't for everybody, but man, it was an action beat 'em up that set a large player base, but screwed us over. For over 20 years we haven't seen a Shaolin Monks like title since then. They lied. They lied back then. Even when they were midway, they still lied. They said, oh yeah, we're gonna do traditional fighters, and then we're also every other year we're gonna see if we can get out this Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks type games. And they lied. They clearly lied. There's an interview with Ed Boon stating that online, so you can even see that. They make these promises, and then they fall short, and then it ultimately just keeps getting worse from there. I mean, I don't know. Well, I mean, Tom here is obviously stating, and people want to be negative just to be negative. That's what people are saying, but we're not. We're just giving criticism at the end of the day.
It doesn't go over well. So the community is just unwilling to accept reality. And I just want to give an example of, again, their inability to accept reality when the leaker, Fate Unknown, said, oh, Chaos Reigns is not selling well. Now, it was obvious Chaos Reigns was not getting very much traction. A month into it, he says, hey, it's not selling well. Warner Brothers has decided to can the future content and move on to the next endeavor. The community just...
Well, it didn't sell well because of how bad it was. That was the worst DLC. That was worse than Aftermath. That DLC was just so bad. I mean... You take a base product that's bad, right? And then you make DLC for that product that's even worse. You already have people that are buying the base game less, and you're going to make a DLC that's even worse than the base product. What did you expect was going to happen? That was just that was a no-brainer. You could see that from a mile away. But I'm just so surprised that people, went out of their way to purchase it in general. And the fact that anybody called it good, there's something wrong.
Could not accept this reality, even though it was obvious what was happening. So they created this, again, delusion, this false reality where, no, this isn't true. We have it on good authority that NRS has given fake information out to multiple sources to try to bust who the leak is. And we see that the leaker, Fate Unknown, was correct. The NRS community is so lost in their delusion, they created a fantasy spy game of cloak and daggers where NRS is feeding different informations to catch this guy or that guy. And the most obvious answer was the truth. Not some convoluted spy game to catch this guy or that guy. Hey, it's not selling well, so content was pulled. The NRS community is unwilling to accept basic reality, so they have to create these delusions, and now this delusion that they're treated poorly at all these tournaments. So there are two examples that they reached to quite a bit. One was, look, in a tournament in MK9, it was a very local tournament, I think in Houston or something like that, and there was a player who had to play his match in the entrance of the men's room because they needed the wall unit. That is not a Mortal Kombat disrespect. That tournament had like 7 people at it. It was an FGC thing. There are several games. Shinblade will tell you a story how he had to play his match in Tekken in the entrance to the men's room. This is just poor FGC poverty era stuff. This is, the FGC as it was still growing into what it is now. It had nothing to do with the game. Every game has kind of had that moment at least once. You hear of many of these moments over the years. And the real truth, all these games have had to pay their dues. There was a time when Street Fighter was, hey, take a backseat to Marvel. You go to the Street Fighter tournament, hey, get stuck in the back. No one cares about you. There was a time with Tekken. You would show up, hey, get stuck in the back. No one cares about you. All these games had to pay their dues. Right. MK never had anything like that. In fact, the community is so entitled world, they interpret things that are not disrespectful as disrespect. A couple of things. They talk about the incident at EVO 2016 when EVO shoved them in the back on the floor. That's a half-truth. What happened was they had a bunch of setups for the Mortal Kombat community. You know, MK didn't drill the numbers of some of the other games. It was on the way up. We had over 700 people. The first year of MKX, we had, I think, 1,100. So we didn't have the big drop-off that we see now in EVO, you know, from consistently drawing, you know, into the thousands as we begin to move up. And now we're, you know, 351, whatever it was, 381, the same numbers as MK9. That's where we are now. But so they had a lot of setups for us to run casuals, like hours of casuals. And then they ran the brackets, top 128, top 64. I mean, these were hours. People had plenty of stations to play, to practice, to run casuals on. But once we get to top 32, they needed those stations for other games that were there. So they took Mortal Kombat off, and then they put those other games there. They didn't remove the setups because they're hating on Mortal Kombat, as is told. They needed those for other games that were tournament games at EVO. Mortal Kombat got a lot of time. And then they moved MK more toward the back of that venue area. And yes, spectators did have to sit on the floor, but I promise you there were chairs and desks and everything for commentators and players, etc. So the top 32 got played there. That wasn't disrespect. It was just change the venue. They were doing something new. And
right. And they're okay. What he's saying is, like, he's not understanding that from all the other games that had to pay their dues, you know, for not being as big as Mortal Kombat, even you know, back then to all the way now, you know, it's still big, but it's not, you know. The other games have come forward a little bit, as you know, more as well. So, but with the venue and everything like that he's saying, how it changed, you know, it's not that it changed. It's that you adapt to the situation at hand, everything that was going on at EVO, and they had to make, you know, choices that would, you know, impact everybody else, including the spectators, you know, sitting on the floor or whatever. They just had to do that. I don't know why. I don't know why they would see that as a negative. I mean, response to MK, it's not like that people hate. They wouldn't. How could you even reconcile that with hating the game? It's not the same. It's just the fact that, you know, they had to adapt. That's all that really is.
They just needed those setups, and they just didn't have enough kind of chairs. I mean, it wasn't because they hated Mortal Kombat. That's completely false, and it is over-exaggerated how poorly the game was treated. Also, the game was on in the arena. It was top 8 was on top 8 day in the arena, and basically nobody showed up to watch it in the arena. And they say, oh, well, they put us on first because they hate us. To the Mortal Kombat community, putting MK on at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 11 a.m. is disrespect. Why are we on at 10 a.m.? Disrespect. No, that is not true. Mortal Kombat gets treated the way it gets treated now because it doesn't draw numbers. It's the lowest man at every single tournament. So MK community wants their game to be treated like they live in the penthouse, when the problem is the numbers they're drawing are in the basement. That is why MK gets treated like this. And it doesn't get treated poorly, it just gets treated where it is. Fighting games are a hierarchy, and where MK is in the pecking order is where it's going to sit at the tournaments. That's normal. If people want MK to be higher on the fighting game hierarchy, then all they have to do is show up for their game, but they don't, because they don't like it, but they don't want to admit it.
That's right.
So they come up with these crazy stories. And by the way, for all those that say, oh, MK gets treated poorly at tournaments, the last Mortal Kombat tournament that it got treated poorly at was a tournament held by NRS called Final Combat, where the ceiling was falling on people, brackets weren't done well, staff wasn't trained, things weren't handled properly. Sonic was on Twitter talking about it. Is that because NRS hates fighting games? No. You allow NRS to treat you like garbage. But you don't demand better from them. You demand better from everybody else and say, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. It starts with them. But rather than admit the fact.
So what he's saying, if you're not understanding what he's like, if you can't put two and two together, what he's trying to say is, what he's saying here is there's no accountability across the board from NRS. You know, I mean, that goes from the entire game itself, from WB all the way down to NRS and so on. But there's no accountability at the venues, you know, to EVO, to anything to the game related, you know. You could see this game, you know, do really well, but there's no accountability. The game will never improve because there's no accountability. It's like, also, like, saying you made a mistake. If you would outright come to the public and say, oh my gosh, dude, we made these mistakes, we'd like to improve, we want to be better for you guys, as you guys buy our games. There's so many different things that you could do to make up for things like that. I mean, excuse me, you probably couldn't make up for things like, from the past, because of the things that they've done are pretty stupid. But, regardless, that's not the point. The point is accountability, and they have no accountability. They don't tweet about it. They don't make statements about it. NRS doesn't make statements about it. It's just, the list goes on. And I think Tom's pretty nailing the point right here. It's absolute sense right here.
Hey, people don't like the game. That's why they're not traveling for it. You create some boogeyman in the FGC that says, oh, we have a conspiracy to keep Mortal Kombat down. Then when he goes on to say that, how come these other games get better production? Well, again, your Pro Series didn't get a good production, and that was held by NetherRealm.
Oh, I'm curious. I want to read that. I'm going to read that. The NRS community deserves so much more. It doesn't shock me hearing how bad our game gets treated at tournaments. That's a lie. The NRS community gets fed shit. Oh yeah, the NRS community gets fed shit for half a decade. They clap. They get exactly what they deserve. You're just saying shit to say shit. Why are other games getting on top production, more than 2 years of game updates, millions of dollars in prize money, while just resetting for scraps, Beto MKX, and even what was, yeah. Okay, so, I mean, with this statement alone, I mean, it's not like settling for scraps is bad, obviously. Nobody wants to compete in a tournament for like $100, $200, or, I mean, it all depends on what you think is like scraps. Somebody could think, 10,000 is, a lot of money. Somebody could think, 100,000, is, too little. You know what I mean? Like, that's the takeaway from that point of view. But like, if you think about Mortal Kombat, how big it is, and how every, the community should, be, the community's playing this game. You have so many different players, and you're looking at the game from like a casual perspective, like me. You're like, oh, this game should obviously at competitions, have a lot of money to be sparing to make these competitive fighters. These competitive fighters drive the game. They don't drive the game's numbers up. I would say that it's not reliant on Evo and stuff like that at all, because you have more casuals than you do hardcore, tournament players. But the fact that this guy thinks he's just saying, shit to say shit, that's not true. Like, in the slightest. There's things that are clearly, not fair to those people that are going to Evo, going to tournaments. They have every right to be mad, but as a casual player, I don't really care for Evo, right? I'm casual. So, like, whatever they do there, that's on them. You want to go compete. If that's your living, that's how you make a living, dude, that's on you. You put your trust into these, companies, to make a game that's good, and then you have to oversee and think, oh man, like, they only put a $10,000 prize, and I've been practicing for how many months? You know what I mean? Like, that's on you. You stop supporting the game. The game's trash. We know it's trash, but we need to make that hurt. It's not just the game's company itself, but and the people that work at the company. It's very obvious the people that work there. Looking at what happened to MK1, yeah. So I mean, regarding those statements there, I mean, that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, again, your Pro Series didn't get a good production, and that was held by NetherRealm. I mean, do they hate Mortal Kombat? They made it. So if they hate it, it's a big problem, isn't it? They're the developer. According to you, if it's treated poorly, quote unquote, that means that somebody hates it. So if I were you, I would look at your developer before anyone else. But he says that, other games are getting over-the-top production, more than 2 years of game updates, and millions of dollars in prize money. We're just settling for scraps. The reason why your game, MK1, didn't get that many years of development time, even though I guess Ed Boon said he planned it, is because it didn't sell, because people didn't like it. Plain and simple. It's not right. Because people are treating MK poorly. MK1 released an expansion that sold horrendously. So the publisher said, we're done. No more content is coming out. That's what happened.
Exactly.
Face the reality. People didn't like the game, not because they were...
And I'm so glad that he's saying this, because I've been saying this. I mean, I have less than... I think I have less than like 50 hours in MK1, or probably even less than 30, I think. Something like that. I don't even think I have a full day. And if I do, that's probably because either I was like sitting in the main menu or something. But the point is that, dude... Oh, by the way, and I do own all the DLC because like I bought it off of a cheap website, you know what I'm saying? But I own everything, right? Because of that regard. But it's really surprising to see that people are criticizing, you know, the game, and they're getting backlash from people that are just saying, "Oh, you're negative. Oh, you're trash." You know, you don't know what MK is. You don't like MK, which when it's the complete opposite. You don't know what MK is. You don't know what made Mortal Kombat a Mortal Kombat title, not only from back in the day, but not only from back in the day. You look at how the designs have truly and drastically changed, the story, the atmosphere, you know, the conquest, which is technically a story, everything that is combined that truly makes what a Mortal Kombat game is gone. It's gone. You got all these bright, colorful colors everywhere. Nothing's like this deep, you know, kind of storytelling with like this menacing, you know, villain, and you know, and then, you know, you can push aside all that if you want to, if you're an Evo player and you just strictly play for, you know, the money, you know, and stuff like that, sure. But here's the thing. The game being good at a base level, successful story, successful characters, character designs, you know, audio, user interface, everything, all of those things boost the Evo, right? Which means more money. If the game is a better state as a whole, everyone that is competing in it is going to be much happier with the prizes because they are going to be up, because everything from buying the game to DLC, MXTs, you name it, is going to be flourishing with I hate MXTs as much as I, you know, add that in there. I hate MXTs. I think the crypt needs to come back. We need to stop with this BS. It's annoying. I hate it. But yeah, all of those different things that I mentioned, it skyrockets, dude. It skyrockets the game to all new heights, you know, for people that didn't know about the game, to you know, bringing back the nostalgic, you know, atmosphere, story, character design. I mean, you don't even have to copy and paste a game. Even if you remade the game, you know, and like an older game, that game would most likely do 20 times better than anything we've got in like the past 10 years. So that's just, for me, that's just the truth. I think that's the truth. If you brought something from the PS2 era or even the older games back, you'd see more money than what you'd see from these newer games. I mean, probably not like the Legacy Collection games, because you can clearly see, like, even with the Legacy Collection, it's not a new game, right? It's really not a new game in at all, and that's kind of depressing on that side of things. But like, you know, it's still something to play, I guess. But at a new game, a AAA game, you know, you see all these things and you're like, oh, what makes a Mortal Kombat game? And I've gone over that countless times with I don't know how many people, and they just don't seem to understand what truly makes a Mortal Kombat game. I think a lot of people fail to realize that, because that is something that is super important. And if you disregard every aspect of it, character designs, the, you know, to the identities of the characters, you know, the crypt, everything that entails what a Mortal Kombat game is, and you slowly strip away all those things, you're left with just another freaking, you know, regular fighter game that just has MK character names and, you know, fatalities and stuff, and that's it at the end of the day. And it's not really a Mortal Kombat game. But sorry for that little rant there, but I just wanted to go on and, you know, to prove and show you that's really how it is.
Not because they weren't winning. They didn't like it because they just didn't enjoy playing it. NRS made a lot of mistakes, and people didn't like the game. That's simple.
Right.
That's
mistakes,
why
no accountability.
you didn't get your more than 2 years this time, even though Ed Boon was alluding to, yes, you're going to get more than that. When you talk about the production of these tournaments and the prize money, that's because people are showing up. If the Mortal Kombat community really wants to get some respect back to their game, all they have to do is show up. If 3,000 people show up to a Mortal Kombat tournament, I can promise you that game will start getting some respect. But they don't, because they don't like it. And again, you'll notice with these tweets,
you make garbage,
it's always blaming everyone
garbage.
but the game and the developer. It's everyone's fault that we're being hated on by everyone. The MK community constantly claims people are hating on their game, the FGC's hating on them, this conspiracy to keep them down, and they never look at the problem. They just create delusions. This delusional world for them to just stop it, to not admit people don't like the game.
Right. Just like the delusions that we saw in MK1, right? We saw the delusional, the way that they did the new era, the MK11 ending to what MK1 started off as. You're just like, dude, what just happened? What just happened here? You know, I was talking to some friends the other day, and I was telling them, hey, you know what would be sick that we've never gotten before? We should get a story game that starts, you know, in a Mortal Kombat game. Even if you were rebooting the series, we should get a Mortal Kombat game that starts with a character that we barely know anything about when it comes to the actual games aspect of things. Is the Great Kung Lao. You know, we hear him mentioned in so many different, you know, games and stuff, but we never know how it starts out, right? Imagine playing a Mortal Kombat game that you're playing as the Great Kung Lao, and, you know, however, right? I thought of the ending immediately, which is, you know, he dies by Goro, of course, but like you play as this character, you go through the story, you know, you're defeating, you know, all these combatants, you're defending Earthrealm. And then you lose. Imagine a Mortal Kombat game where you actually lose at the very end, right? This changes this, you know, how you as the player, you know, you're supposed to be this hero, right? And you're supposed to be saving the day. But at the end of the game, you die by Goro, and you know, it's kind of just like, holy moly, like that changes, you know, this whole I got to be the winner at the end of the game every single time kind of deal. You know what I mean? Or the hero. And it's things like that they could do, is tell a story they've never told, add characters, you know, that we clearly have in MK lore that we don't have in the game. You know, there's a lot of things that they could do, a lot of things to improve the game, to give that, you know, that different thing, you know, that difference that they need, that edge that they don't have in any of these games. They're just, man, dude, I can't express it enough.
And the answers are obvious. I mean, like I said, when the guy says, hey, why don't we get more than that production? Your game didn't sell well in an expansion. Millions of dollars were spent for an expansion that sold
the base game
horribly. That's why you didn't get more. Why did it sell horribly? For the same reason why no one shows up for the game at tournaments. Most people don't like the game. But again, this delusion, they just can't accept that reality. So this comment here is telling.
You know why they can't accept that reality is because they themselves, like, they're too deep into it, and they think, man, I gotta make it good. I gotta make it better. Even if no one else likes it, I'm gonna die on this hill. That's what they think.
This is what the exact problem is. When you're a developer, like you're an NRS, and you have this positivity echo chamber of your mainstream content creators, and the reason why they're doing this is they want to stay in your good graces, but they believe that they cannot tell you the truth or they will be excommunicated. So when you have cultivated this culture of a toxically positive echo chamber, you will never get the truth. You will never find out what's going on. Surely NRS had to be shocked that they made an expansion that didn't sell. They probably didn't plan for that. Probably first time they ever heard Mortal Kombat and new content not selling well in the same sentence. However, if you're a developer and you're wondering what's going on, why are tournament numbers so poor, why is our expansion not selling, when you turn and look to your mainstream content creators, they're telling you that, hey, all this stuff here that people are saying, they're wrong. It's negativity. It's hate. They're just salty. They're not winning. You're a developer. You need to know who to listen to. Like, what are the real problems? Why don't people actually like the game? And if you're being told it's the best Mortal Kombat of all time, every patch
Tom
first
knows
year,
that, but
the game is saved.
These other
all
people,
these
obviously.
mainstream content creators constantly were telling NetherRealm, because in their videos, the game is saved, this, that, or the other, and they're not being honest with the situation. And anyone who was, no, those are haters. So you have NRS who listens to this toxically positive echo chamber that they've cultivated, and it's like, well, yeah, that's not really wrong. These people are just hating, or they're angry, and they're trying to hurt the scene. And the reality is, all these issues that were brought up ended up completely tanking MK1. The fact is, even the changes that they made, people want to say, oh, look how good these changes are. They only seem good because of how bad the game was for like a year and 3 months.
Exactly.
That's how they did the bare minimum. And the NRS community, oh, look what they've done. They give you the bare minimum. They give you slop and you eat it, and they don't know how to turn this slop into a gourmet meal because this echo chamber keeps telling them it's already a gourmet meal. And anyone tells you the food ain't good, they're hating. Your developer can't possibly fix their game or even develop a game to begin with. When people say they don't want this, we don't want cameos, we don't want variations, we want complete characters, but the games that have these things, they're told, oh, well, those games are fine, those games are great. In fact, those are the best Mortal Kombat games ever made. And everyone who says otherwise is hating. They say, oh, well, I guess people must like them, so I'll just keep pumping them out. Meanwhile, the reality is...
I mean, okay, so MK11, a lot of people hated it. They hated it. It was so slow or whatever. I had countless people say that it was so slow. So... it may have felt slow. I don't know. I mean, I played that game a lot. It was one. I like it better than MK1 by a long shot. And but there's different things for that. Like the Towers of Time. I like the Towers of Time. I like the what was it? I like the costumes. I like the Fire God Liu Kang. I did like a lot of those cool aspects of MK11. They were cool. Was there a lot of things that were wrong with the game? Of course, and there's no, there's of course you can admit that in several different ways. MKX was the same way. I hated the combat kids in MK11 and MK1. Sorry, not MK1, MK11 and MKX. They were dumb. I thought those were just really dumb, and the stories for both of those games were mid, bro. They're just mid, they don't compare to the PS2 games, period. But I'm trying to think, like the overall gameplay was, for me, the overall gameplay to a degree was okay. It was okay. I could deal with it even when others couldn't, which is, and they have their own valid reasons, And there's people that play MKX that they do combos so fast, I can't even, I'll lose every day because I'm not that fast. I'm not. I can't do a 20-hit combo like that. Not even in the newest MK1 with all those combos you can do. Like, I'll never be that guy that can do that. I'm just a casual enjoyer of Mortal Kombat, from the story to the crypt to, the concept art to things like that. I guess maybe apparently I'm that niche audience. It's all about Evo now. It's all about the versus mode. It's all about online. I don't know. But I think the game as a whole, people are missing the whole point. It's the game as a whole. It's not just the online aspect. It's not just Evo. It's the game as a whole that is falling apart, which is why your Evo is failing so bad, is that people are missing that part entirely. Is that it's not Evo. It's not this change, that change. It's the game as a whole. The game as a whole, from top to bottom, is absolute garbage, and that's what people aren't realizing. Tom knows. Clearly, he knows, because he's pointed it out several times, stating, the massive amount of things that are wrong with it, whether it's the game, Evo, whoever, But here's the thing: you make your game better, Evo flourishes. That's just all there is to that. But
people are saying we don't want that. We don't like this, but that's being brushed off as hate, salt, because they're not winning in these games. This is the toxically positive.
I'm sorry, I hate that. I hate that they put Deception and all these other games in the background when they know those are the best versions those are some of the best Mortal Kombat games, some of the best Mortal Kombat games, and they put it in a game like MK
echo chamber that the community has right now. And there's no way possible for NRS to get actual legitimate feedback on the real problems with the game, because they are constantly told by their mainstream content creators, who they undoubtedly rely on to figure out like how to fix these games when it's hemorrhaging players, and your community reps, which are your mainstream content creators, are telling you how amazing it
is. So like everybody that's telling you that the game's amazing and how, you know, and, oh, it's not bad, there's nothing wrong with it and this and that. Sorry, I'm gonna have to like, hopefully I can fast forward this real quick, because I know that YouTube's going to be mad at me for that. Yeah, no, he's absolutely right. And I think it just kind of goes to show you that with all of those different things, you know, added up at the very end, which is your community reps to Evo, the player base, negativity, instead of being seen as actual criticism, you know, the NRS as an entire company, and then, you know, your publisher WB and every, you know, and then all of that combined, dude, it gives you what we have today. You know what I mean? Everybody's like telling each other what a great job they're doing, because nobody wants to say that they're doing a bad job, so it just actively gets worse over time. That's kind of what we're seeing. I mean, not kind of, it is what we're seeing. It's clear what we're seeing here. Everybody knows it. It's bad. Man, I can't even... It's just sad. It's sad to see, because this is what we're stuck with, and until a new company buys out WB.
Until the NRS community demands more. Stops making excuses for NRS. Right. Stops, like, you know, either taking real issues and dismissing them as hate or salt or whatever nonsense, whatever delusion they conjure up. Until they demand more for themselves from their developer, nothing is going to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, guys, you kind of get the point here. You know, that's you know, be sure to drop, you know, him a good old subscribe, guys. I mean, Mike Hollow, Real MK Tom Brady, that's a channel name. But I mean, for me, man, when I see that, and I look at it, it's just, yes, this is everything that they need to hear, and then some, but also things that I stated that weren't in this video. You know, things like from the game as a whole to, you know, the character designs. You know, yes, the gameplay matters. The gameplay matters. The special moves matter. Combat system, everything. Like, I understand. You know, the hits, how much damage the hits do, everything as a whole. For Evo, all your Evo players, I get it. But that's not who you cater to first. The people that you cater to first is your casual audience. The people that love the story, they love the MK designs for the characters. They love these characters because they grew up with these characters. You need a really amazing story that you get from the older Mortal Kombat games. Like, the list goes on. The list truly goes on to what you need as a better MK game. You're not seeing that in these newer games, and that's why the game is falling off so bad. But if you cater to that smaller audience, you cater to them, or sorry, you're not smaller, your biggest audience, which is your casuals. And then if your casuals flourish, your competitive gamers will flourish, because you have the game as a whole, make that game amazing, casual players buy it, numbers are up, sales are up, DLC is going to be up, and, you know, DLC characters and stuff like that if the base game did really well. But here's the thing, you have that sale that comes out for the game, it's saying, oh, well, didn't do too well, and then you go on to make DLC. You should expect that to do just as bad, because it's going to be no different and no better than the base game. And that's clearly what we saw. And man, that's all there is to it, man. That's all there is to it. But, you know, all I got to say is, you know, be sure to like the video. Let me know what you think. Am I right? Is Tom Brady right? You know, I think we are, man. I think I am in a lot of ways that he didn't specifically go into. His was more about Evo and, like, yes, the game itself. He did talk about the game itself, but, you know, he didn't go in depth with, you know, like characters, story. You know, I know they did the cameo system in there as well. I didn't really talk on that just because I don't care for the cameo system. I'd rather have a tag system just to begin with and leave it at that. But, you know, I know this was one of my longest videos, probably. So, you know, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, guys. You know, I don't know, man. Is this what we're going to get with MK continuously? I really hope not. You know, let me know in the comments. What do you think? I just can't even. So, we'll see you guys in the next video.